So, hi everyone. This is Christopher Power on the Power Cauldron podcast. I suppose PCP, and I'm talking to Bekah Komar today. Did I pronounce that correctly, Bekah?
Yep.
And where the hell are you? Look at the background.
I know. Every time you talk to me, it's always a different background. I am in Nicaragua.
Where?
Nicaragua.
Nicaragua. Okay. Did you
Yeah.
say the actual location in Nicaragua?
No, that's the most important part. The island of Ometepe.
Of Ometepe?
Ometepe.
So what's special about the island there?
She called me here. It was a very intuitively guided experience coming to this place. It's a beautiful, magical island that is surrounded by the biggest lake in Central America. And so it takes about an hour ferry just to get to the island from the main city in Nicaragua. And it was said that the Mayans were saying that they were seeking to find the heaven on earth. And they traveled by boat and landed on this island and proclaimed that they did indeed find heaven on earth, because it's connected between two volcanoes on the same island, the masculine and feminine. Mm-hmm. And it has fresh water coming down from the stream of the volcano. So you get fresh volcanic spring water, and it's tropical, sunshine all year round. Food grows and flourishes, and it's really dense in all types of forage, trees, plants, food. So it essentially has everything you need, and it's unpopulated.
And unpopulated.
Mm-hmm.
So let me get this clear. This is in the middle of a lake. It's not in the ocean.
Correct.
Okay, so it's in the middle of a big lake.
Mm-hmm.
It's made up of two volcanoes.
Mm-hmm.
How big is the island? Just give us an idea.
I have no idea because I'm on one side of it, but it takes about an hour and a half by motorbike to drive around. So it's quite small. I think last time I looked up on Google, it was like 60,000 population of people.
Okay. For the island itself?
Yeah, the whole thing.
60,000, an hour and a half to go around. So it's a biggish island with two volcanoes, but in the middle of a lake, in the middle of Nicaragua, not connected to the sea.
Exactly.
The reason I ask is in the Arthurian legend, Avalon is not what most people think it is. It's an island in the middle of a lake in the fairy realm created by the Lady of the Lake, you know, the famous sword rising out of the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And it was where the women would meet together. In fact, it was created by the women as a meeting place where the women would meet to work with Grail magic, the magic of the Grail. And the magic of the Grail is tapping into the source of all power and stirring that together as women in a cauldron, you know, hence the cauldron or the pot or whatever. The women would stir the pot and draw upon their power together to create realities, to use their creativity to create new possibilities, new realities together. So the women were the source of power. And it seems like you've got two cauldrons, you know, two volcanoes on that island as well.
Yeah.
Right. So
that is so synchronistic. That feels exactly like what's happening here right now.
So tell us about what's happening here right now or there.
Yeah, well, ever since COVID, that's where many at the time travelers like myself decided to stay. And many people decided to go home. And there is this myth that whoever is meant to be on this island to essentially connect with Mama Gaia Earth will stay, and those that are not meant to will find themselves in a really challenging position of living here. And so those that left end up moving, and the rest of us kind of like the second round, because there's already some really great permaculture here, a lot of permaculture. So a lot of connection to sustainability, growing your own food, building with bamboo. And so there was some really great communities developed already the first round, and now it's these people that found themselves here during COVID now developing kind of the second round of building out more communities that are conscious of all different forms.
Well,
And a lot of women, I have to say.
well, you said, from what you said, this island is considered to be a centre of feminine power. Is that correct by the locals?
Or on the side of the island.
Okay. So it's a place where masculine and feminine energy work together?
Yes.
Okay. So, and that's the way it's considered by the locals, not just the foreign people who turn up there.
That's a great question. I'd like to dive and discover that more, as I believe a few locals carry that story with them.
Yeah.
And that's why it was passed down for me from the travelers. But I don't think most locals are connected to that anymore. A lot of the traditions are extinct here, even though there's petroglyphs and Mayan tradition written all over this island.
Right. So how do the locals relate to it at the moment in your experience?
On one side, they've taught me a lot about their work is with the land every day.
Yeah.
You're growing your crops, you're in the land farming all day long, and you have to understand nature in order to work with it. And so I think in many ways, they're very intuitively connected. In other ways, I think they have been westernized in terms of the process, right? Seeing it as money versus seeing it as a relationship to maintain with the land. Like, this is survival and I need this food and I'm going to grow everything I can to get every single cent, because that's what they need to feed their family. So I think in many ways they're very, very connected and amazing teachers and just know so much about just natural medicines and things like that, but also at the same time, very westernized.
And are they doing a reasonable job at integrating that, or is that something they're struggling with?
That's a good question. I can always see both sides, but I think they may be struggling a little bit of doing what's worked and not really seeing the potential of process improvement, of doing alternatives ways.
Okay, so just before I go on, I want to explore this a lot because there's a lot of commonalities between what you're experiencing and what's happening with me in Thailand. But just so that people get a sense of your background, can you just give us a bit of background on what you've done in the US, what you're doing on an entrepreneurial level? And then I want to explore what we just talked about in more detail.
Totally. Yeah, thanks for segueing there, but also connecting it. And there's always divine connections with us every time we speak. So yeah, for those of you that may not know me, I go by Bekah Komar, and I am a coach online. And that was the path I went down for 2 years. And I'm still actually a coach online, and I am more of a spiritual coach for entrepreneurs. And so I'm a coach that coaches coaches on starting their business. So like Christopher has an online coaching business, I also do. And I support those coaches get started with their business and also grow their business in a way that feels aligned to sell and market themselves and attract clients in a way that really flows versus more of the traditional ways of really hustling and focused on just the sell, but really on what your soul desires to do and expressing that through your business. I have a team now, and I have a business as well as a coaching company called Oshun. And that actually ties in as well into what we're talking about. Oshun is the goddess of sweet water.
Okay, just say that name, just say the name. Sometimes when you say things, it's hard to, at least maybe for me as an Australian, it's hard to actually hear what you said. What was the name again?
Oshun.
Okay, could you spell that?
Oshun.
Okay, good. What's the background?
And it sounds like ocean.
Yeah. What's the background on that name?
Yeah, the story.
Well, yeah,
Two
what's it
types of
mean?
background.
If you said prosperity, most people would think they know what you mean. But when you say Oshun, it's like, what? So I just want you to explain what the intent and the behind the name is. What,
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know Bekah, which will be a lot of you, Bekah is young, but she's been a pretty hardcore Californian entrepreneur for a long time and has a really good business head. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, it is. So, and while we were working together, she went through this transition where she, went from California to Costa Rica and then ended up in Nicaragua, and now we're talking organics and all this sort of stuff. So when I pick a name for something, I call the program I'm running at the moment the Power Cauldron for very specific reasons. One, my name is Power. Two, feminine energy in the cauldron is where power emerges from. And a cauldron is a place where you really stir things up and create magic and bring about real change in the world. So it wasn't just like a fancy name. It was meant to convey a real purpose. So I was wondering what was behind Oshun.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to answer that question. So Oshun came to me as I was walking down the Pacific coast of Nicaragua. I was living off the island for a little bit, and I asked my higher self, what is the name of this entity that's wanting to be birthed through me? Because I was ready to create something bigger. And I was told to look, my mind said, look to the ocean, and I saw an ocean. And I said, that's silly. That domain's taken, as a business mind I am. And they said, no, Oshun, and spelt it out for me as I was walking in the moment. And I said, don't know what that is. I Googled it. I learned that, Oshun is the goddess of sweet water, fresh water. And so she's also a deity from the Yoruban tribe, which is a tribe in Africa. And she represents creativity, femininity, sensuality, leadership, pleasure, all of these things that the divine feminine has been rising up. And it connected so perfectly with what I was trying to portray in business, to once again combine the feminine and of course the masculine. Christopher and I have had a lot of conversations on it this year and last year about the feminine and the masculine and rebalancing that relationship and what the both resemble. So it was a moment of, this makes sense. It's also the convergence of the ocean, which sounds like Oshun, and the Sweetwater River, which the water runs into the ocean. So it was a perfect balance and harmony and reunion of the two. Wow. And the full business name is Oshun Collective, because it's not just me, it's entire collective, a movement, a tribe.
Okay, and how extensive is it so far?
Right now, we are focusing on our main mastermind program, which is Spiritual Business Alchemy. It's a It's essentially a course within Ocean. And it just launched 2 months ago. And we have quite a few members, clients already passing through there. Some have never run a business in their life and are already within a week attracting clients. Others are manifesting their dreams, traveling here to visit me, leaving the US, and also attracting even more clients. So it's been amazing experience, and it keeps growing really rapidly with more ideas, more support and mentors coming in to support this entity, because it's not just me.
So where you live now, what role does that play with the business, and how do they gel together?
Yeah, took me a while to receive clarity on that. It was like I was living in two worlds, as I'm sure you may feel as well. Okay, I have this desire to build community in a place that is not my home, and also another foot on the online world as a coach and a supporter and mentor. And I didn't see it clearly, and now it's organically happening, but also with intention, that it's all connected. Those that are seeking an online business are essentially desiring freedom. We want freedom from a 9-to-5 job. We want freedom from a location, being stuck in one location. And so the business that we're creating as an online entrepreneur coach is essentially the vehicle to provide us to the destination of freedom. The freedom being living in abundance, not in lockdown, essentially, to live off the island, free to express how we want, be how we want, eat tropical, fresh food and fruits, and be free in that newer sense of freedom. So the communities that I'm developing here on the island actually is very connected to the online, because the people that are seeking the online support are also seeking to live in a different way.
So what attracts them to you?
Ooh, lot of attraction.
No, just well, yeah, but what is it about what you're doing that they're looking for?
Yeah. Living differently. I think that summarizes it, and that's been reflected back to me, although it's become so normal. And to live in another country, and not only that, but to live really off the grid for the most part, and to live out in nature. But many people, through me sharing on social media, on Instagram, my day-to-day life, it really attracts people to realize, wow, I'm here in my room working all day on my laptop, and I'm not around anyone. I'm isolated. I'm disconnected from nature. These are all the things that make me feel alive, and yet I can't access them, but Bekah can. That's what I want. I want what she's experiencing. That's really what freedom is to me.
Right. So they're starting to define freedom rather than just live in an idea of freedom. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Well said.
And what do they look for that you have on the island that they don't have? I mean, apart from sitting in front of the computer in a room all day, what is it that they're really looking for?
Yeah. Community, I believe. Community that really, really you can connect with. Maybe share similar belief systems. For me, my community is more of the quote unquote spiritual conscious community. Nature, more connection to the earth in that relationship. Self-expression. So being, and that really comes from what I've experienced here, is a lot of the containers or events experiences here on the island that may be different, but also very fun. Ecstatic dances, cacao ceremonies, community vegan dinners, just different ways of gathering, really, and expressing yourself through with no judgment.
Beautiful. So I'm going to ask you a controversial question. You've lived a lot of your life in California. I've spent several years living in California. In fact, I was going to live there for the rest of my life, and thank God I'm not. I know a lot of people who are very spiritual in California and live in community, right? And these days I just shake my head. That's my perception of it. What have you got that they don't? That's the controversial question. I mean, you were in California and there's a lot of spiritual people and they all want a community, but you went to Nicaragua. What's there that they don't have?
Mm-hmm. Mm. The first thing that comes up for me is a sense of realness. It's not just a fad, and also quite honestly,
Rebecca,
affordability.
Rebecca, you've just frozen. Now you've come back. Just repeat that again slowly, okay? So there was a sense of,
Yeah.
and then it.
So I was saying realness.
Yeah.
A sense of realness, authenticity, and also from more of a practical manner, affordability. Cost lives to live here.
Sure. Yeah. So
But we want to be able to be free. We have all these expenses and we're still living this conscious spiritual way of life, but then having to work really hard to sustain it. That's not the most freeing feeling.
So where does the realness come from?
Yeah. I have to give contribution, respect to the people that live here, the locals, the way they live. They're simple living, don't have much. Some are fortunate to have a brick home and they work really hard all day. They're very connected to the earth, like I mentioned, and they're very kind. And also something you've shared about people in Thailand, that kindness and the real genuine kindness, not just a facade. So that to me is what I would say would stick out of what the realness is, as well as like the simplicity of what I recognized as I came here on the island was before when I was in the US, what was spiritual meant consumption. I need to buy all of my essential oils, all of my crystals, my sage, my Palo Santo. I need to eat a certain way, and that's going to be ordering online to make sure I have this exact type of superfood. And I come here and you can't access any of that. And what I realize is there is real nutrients and food growing from the tree. Why don't I eat what's here already?
What a controversy. You know, I was talking to someone a couple of days ago and I said, you know what? We know this isn't true, but the way we actually live our lives is we believe food comes from shops
Mm-hmm.
and supermarkets, right?
Yeah.
And in Thailand, they know without a shadow of a doubt that there are shops, but food comes from the land, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
they either grow it or it's over the fence. There's a rice paddy, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's like they know food comes from the earth, from the land,
Yeah.
right? From even if it's the chickens, you know, and it's they have to chase the chickens, you know.
Yep.
It's not, they don't just, you know, is this one or this one or this one, or they don't just pick up a plastic bag and put it in a trolley. You know, they have to get the bloody chicken first, you know, or
Yeah.
pick up the eggs out of the nest, you know. So yeah, this is so refreshing for me because I've been stuck in Australia for 13 months now because of the COVID thing and a couple of other things, but mainly the COVID. My family live in Thailand, sort of behind me there, out in the hills, well, in the flats near the hills. And everything you're talking about is wisdom an insight, an experience that I've tapped on in Thailand. And I really want to go back because we've got 5 acres of land, a rice paddy, a whole community of people who've been devastated by COVID. Not the disease, but the economic effect it's had on them and the work situation. And I wanted to completely be one of the catalysts. My wife, Katai, is the prime catalyst for this, to completely transform the community so they become self-sufficient and self-reliant. And it won't take much, it'll take a bit of money to get the ball rolling, but after that, the need for money will start to, as you would say, just the expenses drop dramatically, rather than in the West where the rents keep going up, the costs keep going up, you name it, the demands, the taxes keep going up. It's just like getting them to the point of self-sustaining. So that's what I call the Pechabun project. And the one thing that I was talking about earlier that I want you to comment more on is, how do you see people like yourself and myself, who are frankly Westerners? That's what the word Falang means in Thailand, Westerners. Coming into communities that are really grounded and simple, work really hard, have massive tradition. You've got Mayan stuff all over the place. That's just one small part of a temple near where I live. So they've got this incredibly deep tradition, but they're not so much blinded, but they're occupied fully with just trying to survive because of the economic system we have in the world.
Yeah.
How do we come in and contribute without imposing our ways on the community, learn as much as we can from them, but realize what we truly have to offer? And when those two combine, what do you see emerging from it, if it's done with respect and done properly? So first question is, what do we bring to them and what do they offer us, and how can we marry that together? And then second, after that, I'll come back to it. What do you see emerging?
Yeah. Wonderful question. And it's a really important question that many people, as we come into, as a Westerner, into another country, into someone else's home and land, I mean, it's all our land as human beings, and Earth is one, but in that construct of borders, it's our land. And I want to respect that. So I'm fairly new. I've only been living here for a little bit less than a year. And I've just been sharing and talking to others that have lived here quite a bit longer, 10, 15 years, and built their new homes and lives and businesses here. And essentially interviewed them and asked them these types of questions. And many who are also building are also finding ways to be able to give back and to really serve the community here that's already existing, the locals. And some of the ideas is really looking at empowering them, not just, this is cheap labor, here's your job, do a good job, and I pay you in the transaction, but through empowerment. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to do this job, and then after I can empower you to then be able to provide this service in the growing economy and market, because we're bringing more people here, so that means more jobs for you. And we're training you and teaching you the skills maybe that weren't possible before. So looking at development and support and empowerment. There was one couple that got a few investors here on the island, built this beautiful eco lodge. And I talked to them about how they have such a wonderful team of employees that have been with them for like a decade. And a lot of it was through treating them like family, and through that empowerment and helping them to progress giving them new jobs, new responsibilities, even if they doubted themselves, but holding space to be like, you can do this. They progressed and were able to build a home for themselves, which would have never been possible, or buy transportation like a motorbike. And so I think it's just really not only just giving jobs, because anyone could do that, but providing them tools and love and support.
And what do they give you in return?
Mm, a lot of the times, loyalty, information, like so connections of ways of doing things, how it works, because it's a different world here, as you know, living in Thailand, like a sense of family here, like really, really family at large, which makes a community. Yeah, a lot of knowledge.
I'm just stunned. I'm sitting here listening to you just list a few things, but just one of those things on its own is so profound, at least in my experience, to have a real connection with family.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 22 and finished university, I ran for the hills, or to the beach actually, and ran away from my family and basically abandoned them. And when I came back from Thailand to have an operation on my leg here, and then got stuck here because of COVID, in about 3 5-minute conversations, I healed that separation of 40 years because I'd understood what family really offers, not what it should offer, not how it should be, not the Western theory of it, not that anybody can do anything they want on their own, blah, 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 blah. It was just like I experienced real family and real loyalty and advice from people who knew how to live on the earth, things that you've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And it's changed, not only did it change my life, but it healed so many things that were so fundamental that I just walked away from because I was one of the original alternative people.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to do it all better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you can see where the world's at because of that. And yes, there's a lot of spiritual growth that's happened, but so many fundamentals have been ignored or lost.
Yeah.
Or overridden with mental ideals or spiritual ideals. And one of the biggest things for me was realizing I'm a spiritual being by nature, you know, so being spiritual is sort of like trying to be Australian. I already am, right? You know, it's just that's where I was born. But bringing that spirituality into the physical world and then sharing it with people, because I know a little bit about the physical world, but these people live in their world very intimately and deeply, sharing my relationship with the divine, my spirituality with them could be extremely healing for me, let alone valuable to them. You know, because you said one of the
Yeah.
things you do is educate them in new skills, which is, that's what we offer. You know, if they
Yeah.
do get on the internet and use it wisely, it could change their lives and
Yeah.
free them up to pursue their tradition. You know, the island's full of tradition. As you said, it's carved into all the rocks, but they're too busy keeping their head above water to pursue that tradition and then share that with us.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. There's like numerous occasions where I've experienced that, and I'm grateful for you to remind that that's a big part of it as well. I remember when I was living, once again, right before Oshun, that name came to me. A group of my girlfriends created a women's circle while we were living there for 2 months. And our intention was to focus on how to support the locals and the community and sustainability. And the big question of every gathering in the Women's Circle was, if someone put a microscope, the world put a microscope in on where we are right now in the world, what would we show as an example of a new way of living and being? And so from that lens, we did a lot of brainstorming. And one of the things we really wanted to ensure to do is bring these women that were living in survival mode into this space. So we finally brought one of the women who was the housekeeper of the hotel into the circle. And we did a cacao ceremony. We opened up our hearts and did a meditation in Spanish translation. And she just started crying when she got to share, because she had never experienced a space like that she felt safe to share.
I have a friend who husband and they live a lot of the time in Beirut, and she's English. Her husband is I think Syrian, but or Lebanese, and she ran a women's circle there in a house that was right on the wall of the house, was against one of the most troubled suburbs of the whole city. Right? Mm-hmm. And she ran a women's circle with Muslim women there. And the one thing she shared with me is they're so hungry for anything like this.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely just drinking it, you know, because because these women who I would think live in a difficult place and under religious restrictions that would be difficult, they're so hungry for something that's real. I have a friend living in the house I live in who's Persian or Iranian, born in Tehran, lives in Tehran. And what I've learned about life in Tehran versus what you see on TV, it's like, are we talking about two completely different worlds? You know? So there's such a hunger out there, particularly among young people, but also the mothers and the older women as well, for something like this. Mm-hmm. So tell us more. What did she contribute once she really shed her tears and opened up? What did she add to the group?
Well, energetically, I think it was just vulnerability, right? All of us like feeling connected. Oh, wow, we're all the same. And yeah, she was able to express herself and share, you know, some challenges she was having back home in her neighborhood and not feeling safe to share it with other people because there's a lot of gossip. And so she's even felt unsafe to share exactly what it was with us. But to be able to share that she was afraid to share and couldn't was a release in itself.
And what did you get out of that?
Of course, the feeling of gratitude and the good feeling, you know, when you give food to someone that's hungry, like that same feeling of being able to give to someone who is deeply needing support. Absolutely. And yeah, the reminder that, wow, this really makes a difference.
Wow. Oh my God, I'm going back through the Arthurian legend and all the details and just see how this works in the real world.
How?
And when you said that, it really makes a difference. Honestly, I believe the changes aren't going to come from the governments or from the elites, whether they're the wealthy elites or the spiritual elites. I think it's going to come from people like us who are willing to go into other worlds, and it's going to come from the down-to-earth everyday people, whether that's going from Martha's Vineyard to Brooklyn or, you know, Los Angeles to Nicaragua or Brisbane to Lom Sak in Phetchabun in Thailand. You know, there's going to be this weaving together, but the power is going to come from the everyday people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that your experience?
It feels that way ever since I've come to this island, and as the years progressed. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
where to from now?
I've been really holding true to just one part of what you shared to me when I reached out to you. I don't even know how long ago. I think it was in October of 2020, saying, I sent Christopher a message and I was like, okay, Christopher, I'm needing the astrological updates on what this next year is going to come. What energies are we going to experience in 2021? And I remember you saying, and I may be just rephrasing my interpretation of what you shared, but it was all about practically grounding and rebuilding, not building new, but taking the old and bringing that in, and leaving the old that doesn't work any longer, to rebuild systems, processes, and in my case, building new ways of living, communities, residential homes for people to relocate to.
Yeah, I remember that. And it's so true. Now that we're in the middle of it, or starting to be in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So how do you see what you're doing in Nicaragua and what I'm starting in Thailand? How do you see that linking up or networking around the world? Because there's a possibility of these places becoming not filmed for a start, so they become living examples for other communities all over the world, Africa,
Yeah.
South America, maybe even wealthy countries,
Yeah.
I know people who are doing that in Australia as well. So how do you see that networking together? How can we connect up and, 1 + 1 = 11?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a great question you asked before, and I've even brainstormed. And a lot of these ideas and my inspiration came from my partner, and he's been the one that catalyzed me to realize that this is a part of what I desire to do, which is build these communities and this new way of living. But I just want to mention before, for any of you listening, that it's not like we're doing anything new. Like, yeah, there's been communities like this forever. Like, obviously, Christopher, you've experienced this, and yeah, there's many different types of communities out there. And I think what we're really now doing is finding a practical way of living. We've had some very radical ways of living in the past, and that was needed to get us now to a way that's sustainable long term. I think the past communities in many different forms, fruitarian and very strict vegan, or a certain type of spiritual practice, that you could go for a month and be like, whoa, I'm changed. But can you live that way long term? And is it sustainable for all of your hierarchical needs? So now we're really transitioning into how can we sustain these, not only as a human in our individual needs, but with the earth and globally, economically. So I think within that sustainability perspective and building pragmatically and consciously is connecting and partnering. So connecting, like you had said, how do we make 1 + 1 = 11 all across the globe of these different communities is working together. And I can see that happening in many ways, creating different blueprints, creating partnerships so people aren't stuck in one community, like you choose this one or that one. And that's where all of your money goes and you're stuck there. Well, what if you want to invest in a different way and be able to have the freedom to connect between communities, to have different experiences and different family homes? Also, I can see the new types of currency, which is coming in as I feel is happening quite soon, based on the reset of a chain, like a crypto type of setup to connect us in another form as well, integrating technology possibly. So I think it's endless possibilities, but I'm curious to think or hear from you what you've brainstormed since you last asked that question.
I wrote an email and a Facebook and LinkedIn post last night, basically on this, but it was not as grounded and practical as the way you just expressed it, but it had the same thing. And when you look in human design, in fact, maybe I'll see if I can share this on screen because it might be a little easier to follow. By the way, you don't mind me showing your chart, do you, Bekah?
No, not at all.
Okay, so there's a big change happening in the structure of human design, which is this channel here from gate 49 to 19. And basically, this is breaking down over the next 10 years. And that's going to send an echo effect up here. In other words, it's going to change the way this works, the way this works, the way this works, and then it'll come back to here. So I don't want, for the people who don't understand human design, I don't want them to go, well, what? You know, I'm just saying there is a certain breakdown happening that's creating physical change, a need for much greater intimacy, which is going to change the very structure of community. And those four things echoing back are going to actually change the way we relate, especially emotionally, as human beings.
Yeah.
Now, there are people being born like that already. They're just filtering in, but they're often considered weird or autistic. And in the email, I posted a picture of a little girl I know in Thailand who you'd think at least is autistic, nothing else, you know. And yet we relate in such a profound way. And it's not, the thing is that for thousands of years, we've been driven by emotion. Now, we've also needed to survive. We've also needed to figure things out. But there's emotions haven't been distinct enough for us to become aware of how they drive us, so that they no longer drive us, they become a way of relating more intimately and deeply with more love involved, if you understand what I mean. Now, all the stuff that's going on, I don't know whether you know, but some really crazy stuff happened in America yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to continue. You know, whoever wins or loses, it's just going to get more and more. And because things are breaking down and new things, it's not breaking down for the sake of breaking down. It's cleaning up what we've brought with us and taking the best and leaving the rest as fertilizer or whatever you want to call it, you know, as baggage or contribution to somebody else. So this is going on now, and it's going to continue throughout this decade. And in the next decades ahead, people are going to be born who don't need emotions to drive them to be connected to their tribe. Now, one of the things you just pointed out that I hadn't occurred to me, but just went, oh, so people want that supportive community, and they're obviously going to have a tribe around them, wherever you are, that occurs naturally anyway. But people are going to want to not just stick with one. In other words, they're not emotionally attached. Right? You're a member of this, and so you've got to be, and those people over there, they're weird. And if they come anywhere near our land, kill them, right?
Yeah.
Or throw them out of office or anything like that, right? Or cancel them on Facebook, right? It's like, no, hold on. I can relate out of love to the people here, but then when I travel to a very different community, I can learn how to love them. And then we can build relationships built on love. And I don't mean, look, I was there where the hippies took off in Australia 6 months before they even arrived. Right. So I've seen the alternative scene from the very beginnings right up till now. And your summary is, it's like, we're this way, we're vegan, we're, you know, I've been part of several of them, you know, constantly colon cleansing all the time and, you know, growing our own things and doing healing seminars. But it was always, you're either with us or against us. You're either part of us or not. Rather than, I have a community, but part of our joy is going and visiting other communities and learning from them and developing more wisdom and seeing how very different people get along and what we can create together coming from very different places.
Yes.
And this is what you're getting. And the actual technical stuff of human design about how human beings are, it's very nerdy and technical, the way it was originally explained, and still people talk about it. But now I'm going, yeah, but how does that work in the real world? Well, we're no longer going to be emotionally stuck in one tribe, which means we can change the way we live our life, not all the time, but whenever we feel the need for personal growth and change, get to learn to relate to other people much more intimately based on love. That's the way to resolve conflict, which means we have to be open, we need to be respectful, you know, we need to have all the better qualities of human beings, humble, you know, and then together build a new level of that community or a new level of our understanding of community, which means we use our emotions as a way to relate consciously, not as things to conflict about until somebody wins.
Yeah.
So this is a level of abundance that we've hardly dreamed of. You know, unless we're really stoned and then we go around doing it in incredibly impractical ways, you know, because we're too out of it and not grounded enough. And I know that because I've been there, I've done that, right? So, and I've seen many people do it way more than I ever did, you know. So now it's that sustainability, you know, you can go and, oh, that changed my life. And what seminar will I go to next that will change my life? Rather than how do I take that into my everyday life? Share it with my partner, my children, my community. Add value to them. Then visit other communities.
It's like the biggest wake-up call for me, and why I see this happening, because once again, it always comes from our own experience, was I realized a year prior, as I was building my business, and the traditional way of Western living is, the dream is you have your own home, I can have all my stuff, my privacy, never have to talk to my neighbors. And I became a hermit in my own world amongst the city of Portland, Oregon. And then when I started traveling, gratefully right before COVID, I finally had my own freedom living in a community for the first time. While everyone else was experiencing isolation, most of the world being in lockdown in their room. And so for me, it was such a contrast between living in my own little world in a home separate from community, and then living within a community, realizing, wow, I was in my home doing all of the meditations and spiritual practice, personal growth and development, but not realizing by just living it in a community, it actually integrates a lot quicker and it's a lot more effective. So, you know, living with people and having the real life experiences and community, and finding ways to really connect and learn from each other and find resolution in like a practical way from love. it can be challenging, but then it's also such an elevating and growing way of living as humans.
Look, I said in the email, how's it going to change things? And I said, it's not going to get rid of the challenges. In fact, it'll probably bring more, but it's going to get rid of the need for drama in order to grow. And when there's anything more than just a stimulating bit of drama, it becomes deadly. You know, that's been going on for thousands of years, and millions, hundreds of millions of human beings have suffered for that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's something we need the challenges to grow, but we don't need the drama.
Yeah.
Emotionally, the emotional drama. You know, if we're going to grow as a humanity, that's not going to bring us together.
Yeah. And what does that take? What attributes?
Well, that's why I work with the Arthurian legend, because that is a map of it's a beta test of what we're doing now. So just to answer that question really quickly and without going into all the detail, one, it takes a few good women from different worlds to come together and go, are they ready for us yet?
Mm-hmm.
Women have to find their power, not chase it, not compete with men. They have to find true power. Because if you're a beautiful refrigerator and you're not plugged into the wall, you're just a fancy cupboard and not a very spacious one either. So you can say that about your human design. You might know everything about your human design, but if you're not plugged into your power, real power, not false, what people chase as power, nothing's going to work. The fridge isn't going to be a refrigerator. That's how important. So women are fundamental, and I'm not talking about feminists, I'm talking about women realizing they already are the source of power. That's why it's the women in Beirut who are so hungry, and it's the women in the woman in Nicaragua, or wherever you were in Nicaragua, who just was ready to drink it up with other women. Women need to work with other women who have wisdom and openness, because that's where the legend was born. Then we need to look at the magic of differences. That's what Merlin was, and I won't go into that's a whole story in itself. Then we need to look for an opportunity where someone, a man, can be trained into what it really means to be a true man. So he can be a healthy leader and an empowered leader, especially with the input of nature and the women. Then you need the right opportunity for him to take up his calling, pull the sword out of the stone. Then he has to test those qualities of healthy masculine energy in the real world. That's where the 12 battles Arthur fought to bring peace to the land. Then the men and women, now that you've got a man who knows his strength and is empowered and has all the qualities, the chivalry, as they used to call it, right? He needs to gather with the women to build a structure, whether it's a business, a community, or whatever. And within all of that story, there are map after map after map of how to do it. And what's excited me about a lot of what you shared is you don't know the story, but you're following the map perfectly, like almost word for word. It's not word for word, but example after example that goes, yes, yes, yes. So women need to find their power. men need to be empowered by men and women. Then we need to create healthy relationships so that we're plugged into our power. Then we live the lives we're designed to live because we're empowered, we can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Not doing it from studying human design, but for real life experience. Then we start creating community together.
Yeah.
When that's working, we then go and find the source of all power, called the Grail or the Cauldron, right? We bring that back, and that is that power of the feminine being available to empower everyone in the community is what will make it long-term and sustainable. And then finally, men not buying into the fact they're insignificant as they grow older.
Mm.
If they get over that and realize they've got their own magic that they can learn, this thing will never stop for thousands of years.
Mm.
The biggest falling short was the men underestimated themselves.
Oh.
Even when they were empowered, they bought into their own self-doubt about, I'm old.
Mm.
That's how it's, so that's the general overall map of it. But it starts with women like yourself, working with other women, stopping blaming men, healing whatever abuse has happened, all that needs to be dealt with, but not focused on as the problem. The problem is women have forgotten or disconnected from or willingly left their power in search for something they thought was greater and isn't. Because power is very simple. It's all over that island in the stillness when you're walking down the path during the day.
Yep.
So that's just my 2 bobs worth, but does that make sense to you?
It does. Yeah. Thank you
But
for reminding me. I've heard the story briefly from you, and it's that reminder of there's already a recipe out there.
that's what I'm trying to get at. There's already a recipe out there. Now, that doesn't stop women and men being highly creative.
Yeah.
Right. But if you don't cook in water, then you don't have some salt or something like that, it's not going to taste right. You've got to do the basics really well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You get the basics well. You know, women know they're the source of power. Empower the men to do what they truly want to do. Build healthy relationships by resolving differences. Out of that, build communities where the people so-called running the community humbly serve the people in the community and are living examples to inspire those qualities out of the children and the old people and the so-called ordinary people, because that's what makes the whole thing sustainable.
Yeah.
You can be the greatest leader in the world. If no one will follow you, it's...
Yeah. Not much of a leader.
Yeah.
So where do you feel we are now, right? Because there's steps of integrating and preparing.
Well, you nailed it earlier. Where we are now is it's gone from a great legend for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, to something people studied in the last 50 years as an ideal along with other things. And we dreamed about it, talked about it, meditated on it, went to seminars on it. And in simple terms, now the shit's hit the fan. It's happening. It has to become practical, sustainable, and authentic. Otherwise, it'll just die as another cult or religion, or it won't last that long. You know, it'll be just another distraction. But if it morphs into real practical results that work on the land with everyday people, and everyone enjoys the process. And it's safe to love, and it's safe to be powerful. You're not going to be attacked because you're powerful, which is really important to women because they're the source of power. If you feel you're going to be attacked for being powerful, you're going to withdraw the power, and the whole community will suffer.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't love, you can't realize your full potential. Doesn't matter who you are. So it's now making it sustainable in the real world. And 2020, it's like 2020 said, stop, really look. 2021 is saying, now you have to build it.
Mm-hmm.
Build it. What is it? Build it and they will come and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like no more talk, because people are going crazy talking about it, running seminars on it, doing politics based on it, trying to pay their bills, trying to raise their children, trying to get a good education that doesn't indoctrinate them into something or another, right? They're going crazy doing that. If we don't build it now, either someone else will have to do it or humanity's screwed.
Yep. That's how we're feeling.
Yeah. So, in business, best time to go to market is when there's a real demand, correct?
Yeah.
Right? When people really want what you've got, that's a good time to sell, Well, this is where we're at right now. And I mean this, literally 2 days ago, Mars went into Taurus after 6 months in Aries, which hasn't happened for 500 years. That lit the flame, but now's the time to build. The next month and a half, it's interesting because this was going to be done a week ago, this podcast, and it got messed up, whatever. And now we're doing it, and the time is perfect.
As always when we meet. Yeah, and along with the political things happening in the world, especially in the US at the moment, it's more and more signs of what's to come. Like there's clear indicators from the globe of the progression of, oh, okay, it's time to build because there is a change. People are no longer going to be comfortable where they're living. They're looking for some different solution. Why wait any longer?
How do you see those solutions yourself? Give me your perspective. I know I can talk for hours, but what can you see so far of what, apart from what you've already shared, where this is going to go?
I'm not an expert by any means and not an avid researcher, and this may be half intuition, half information shared with me.
It's why I asked you, because you're not an expert.
Thank you. What I've been seeing over the last year is obviously the progression of going from lockdown and for 1 year to that transitioning to a big crash in the economy. Let's pump more money to stimulate it. Now the elections, gold price went up all-time high. Now cryptocurrency is at an all-time high. Even just a week ago, it was like 20,000 and now it's 38,000 today.
Wow.
Which is signs that there is a transition happening. People are losing trust in the US dollar. They're putting their money elsewhere. With that, it's losing trust in the biggest economy in the world, the US. Well, where do we go now? If there's not money to live in the US, people are flocking out. And I've seen this firsthand with friends, other friends who are getting similar feelings that it's time to leave, change a lifestyle, downsize, minimalize, become unattached, as you referenced earlier, release attachment to being in one place and one identity, one community and family, and being able to be more independent, self-sufficient, not reliant on one group, government, family, other person. So that's what I'm saying.
You know, the interesting thing when you say that is it sounds like the hippie thing 50 years ago, but the difference I see is being involved with multiple groups actually increases your ability to get more intimately and deeply involved with each group.
Yeah.
You bring more to
Yeah.
the group. That's the paradox. You think, oh, well, I could live here and I could live there. And it's like, no, you've got to, when you live there, you're really involved and you're giving and receiving as much because you know this is precious time. And then when you go
Yeah.
somewhere else, it's not like going to a seminar, which is a break from everyday life where I can grow. It's more like this is where I contribute. This is where I bring my very best to the table while I'm here. And then when I go here, I give and receive fully. It's like it makes it more sustainable because there are more outlets, it becomes continuing education as well as continuing contribution, and you grow. By the time you get to my age of 72, you know, death's coming down the line somewhere, you know, and it's like every day becomes more precious. Whether you might have had that experience earlier, you know, a near-death experience or whatever, but it becomes like I need to put my whole heart and soul into this because there come a time when this experience isn't available anymore.
Yeah.
And life becomes precious because of what you can give and receive.
Yeah.
So rather than, oh, I've got a community here and a community there and a community there, it's like I go to this group meeting like multi-level marketing and we have a big rah-rah meeting. It's like, no. You come and you build. You come and you contribute. You come and you learn. And as a stronger and more empowered individual, you then bring that to somewhere else where you can give and receive and learn. And it becomes more interwoven and more contributory.
Yeah.
It means King Arthur can hang out with the local farmers for a day. And
Yeah.
they can learn from him and Guinevere just being themselves, and Guinevere and Arthur can hang out with the local people and find out what their real issues are and get some wisdom from them. And so that's what used to happen, by the way, in
Exactly.
So,
and other societies, other tribes, other civilizations coming together.
well, see, the Mayans didn't have the ability to go and visit Asia or Europe, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe
But now we have the internet.
now we can live in multiple cultures simultaneously.
Yeah.
But the thing is to bring the depth. And as you said, if it's not sustainable, it's sort of a soft addiction. It's something you do to feel good, and then you go back to not feeling good.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy. And to feel good, you need simple time. You know, just doing simple things.
Yeah.
Because the world's so complex. So how can we, I'm going to ask this in two forms. I'm really looking for investors for building our thing. It's not as developed as your place there, but I'm sure you're looking for more input, more involvement, more development in some way. So I'm going to ask you, what can we do to support what you're doing? And how can we find people who are willing to invest both money or sincere resources, the best of themselves, not just, you know, escapism or whatever? How do we draw that into people being aware of this and willing to invest money and or time into the development of these things? Because there are a lot of communities around, but how many are truly sustainable? Now, I've got access to almost everything you need in Thailand. even a guy who's traveling the world, who's Thai, who's teaching people about living off the land and how life can be so easy. You know, we've got connection with that. What's going on there? What are you trying to build? How can we support that? And then for people listening, how can we draw to us something that will help develop this network in a way that's appropriate for you and can support me in what I'm doing? So have I made that question too complicated, or do you follow what I'm saying?
I believe I follow.
Okay.
Remind me if I don't answer it specifically. So at this point, so those of you that are wondering, like, there is no website yet. This has been something that I've been brainstorming for about 9 months, and I just recently bought the land myself, and but I already have the entire team, like you've said. Like, it's been a year of just last year integrating, adapting, learning, finding all of the resources to create this, all the different skills to create a community and sustainability. So all of the stuff is there. It's just not the business side. So I think one, it's creating the practical plan. So how does this actually look? And that could be for, I don't know if you've already created that part as well, Christopher, but yeah, just making something that's a visually, an investor portfolio. So if you're interested, reach out to us. As me, a manifestor, I'm inviting you to reach out. If this is something that excites you, and I've talked to many people, even through Instagram, that I've been connected through friends who have a desire to build a community or be a part of the build of a community and have specific skills in permaculture, architecture, I don't know, aquaponics, solar, wind power, whatever it is, reach out to us, because we may have a piece of the puzzle, or you may have a piece of the puzzle that we are looking for. So yeah, this is all about a collaboration. It's not just us. So connect with myself on Instagram, or reach out to Christopher, of course, through his channels or email to say, hey, I'm interested in this. I don't know how I fit in, but this is what I can offer. Or if it's a monetary investment or skill-based investment, time-based, then I think that's where the beginning is. We're calling in the team, the tribe for this. We already have the vision, the idea, the land, it sounds like. And that's where I could see it going next. What do you feel?
Well, I'm the first volunteer. I've learned in 2020 one thing about myself, that I'm very good at leading from the front. Rather than telling people what to do, just charging out there, seeing if anyone follows.
Yeah, me too.
But so yeah, it's like I'm from what you've told me, you've got a lot in place already there. Like, your partner has a lot of experience, doesn't he?
Yeah.
In this sort of thing. So it's not like where we have it, we've got the land and some tamarind trees, right? But there's a lot more that needs to develop there. Whereas you've got the farming up and going. But
some of it.
Some of it, okay. So there's similarities. Right now, the one thing that's stopping everything happening is cash flow. So I'm seriously looking for people who want to, and look, in exchange for that, I'll work with them. I put out an offer to people in the last couple of weeks for a few $1,000s. I'd work with them for life on their projects. It was only to a few people. And that's been lukewarm response. Maybe I'm undercharging. Maybe I'm worth more than that. Who knows? But I've also got to the point where it's like, now's the time to build. So I'm not going to muck around with people who are excited but distracted. I'm looking for people who have got the time and energy, the money or the interest or the passion to put into this, so it can go from being a theory to being a reality.
Yep.
Now, you've got a team where you're at to build much further than what you've already done. I've got a team where I'm at to build much further than we've already done. It's probably a little bit behind you, but the whole community's sitting around because of the COVID lockdown, just screaming, give me something to do. You know, it's not like a handout. It's like, as you said, they work all day. You know, it's just built in. I had a friend who, one of her cousins, worked every day in the rice fields till he was 110, went to bed one night and died.
Wow.
Right? He worked the last day he died. And his wife was 108. She died 3 months later because she missed him.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, it's not like they're the world's full of lazy people looking for handouts. You know, the world's full of, well, 70% of them are generators. They want to work. And you know, you want to get things happening as a manifester, and the others want to make sure they're successful, the projectors. And there's a few people who'll sit around just like holding a mirror, making sure we can see ourselves. But right at the moment, that cash flow, because of the system we're in at the moment, to break out of it, we've got to honour the system we are in at the moment, get the cash flow, distribute it to people who are willing to do the work rather than accumulating it with a few people, and get them to work. You know, my favourite saying is the greatest wasted resource on this planet is human potential. And there are people just give me a chance to have a life and put me in a system that's collaborative, not selfish. And not only will I build a life for me and my family, I'll build a community because it's built into me as a human being to long for and to flourish in community.
Yeah.
That's why we do it. You know, we're not stupid. So for me, I would go, anyone who's got cash flow to put in there. Now, again, it needs to be done from generosity, but fair exchange both ways.
Exactly.
So I'm really into win-win. I'm not into grabbing it and running or anything. I want to create win-win. Now, that takes people with a particular commitment to weave that together where it actually works. But there are people around like that all over the place.
Yeah.
And I'd call those people to support you and to support what I'm doing, and even support us supporting each other. You know, because from my experience, Rebecca, or Bekah, she likes to call herself, is brilliant at getting the ball rolling, at getting things started, which is what you do in your class, get people up and going.
Yeah, thank you.
And not only so, in a way that both improves their life and brings out their greatest talents. Now, that's straight out of a human design, but it's also a couple of years of working with Bekah on this. I know it's true. You know, she's brilliant at getting things up and going fast, where the physical world is actually manifesting its full potential. It's actually, even in human design, the true potential of capitalism. But it's not what most people think is capitalism. It's certainly not socialism, but it's people being empowered, working together on a global level to bring out the very best in each other tangibly, not just in theory. So she's brilliant at that. Me, I'm someone who leads by following my inner guidance. I've got a ton of experience, and now I've been blessed, and it was literally given to me, with an incredible community of people who can be an inspiration for empowering people of scarce means or in poverty on a global level, to create a model for that. and doing it by having our feet on the ground in the land. And that's where I've found the right people who have the right intent. And my thing is to energize them so they can manifest it. And then educate people into the map of how to make that sustainable long term, how to put it together, make it sustainable long term, and then share it on a global level. Now, anyone watching this who that triggers anything with, I would encourage you, with Bekah's blessing, to contact either me, and I'll put you in contact with both of us, right? What I've learned today, I've always suspected this, but what I've learned today is Bekah and I have so much in common that it'd be absurd for us not to support each other or not to at least encourage each other, because we're just doing the same thing in different parts of the world.
Yep.
Now, Bekah has the business savvy that I don't. I have the people savvy that a lot of people don't have, and whatever you want. Sorry, the experience. Thank you. Yeah. I'm an elder.
And energy.
Sorry?
You may be an elder, but you have plenty of energy and excitement and passion.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And the blueprint.
Very, very true. So anyone watching this who wants to see this blossom, here are 2 seeds. Right?
Yeah. And what I will add to that, and this is something that I've really been processing as well, because this year really forced me to also break down my finances to rebuild my new future. And I wouldn't have been able to invest in this new country if I weren't able to let go of my attachment to my past. And as I see and can predict, it's not always a statement of truth, what the world is changing into, allowed me to sell essentially all my assets, sell my home back in the US, and reinvest with confidence, knowing that I don't just have a home and a mortgage for the rest of 30 years, but I have a place with no debt and a place that's sustainable long term, that I don't have to pay bills on every month or make sure that I'm covering the costs of living. And that to me is my version of freedom. And I'm sure for all of you, you may be feeling the same way now. Like, why am I playing into this system when it's not really serving me anymore?
That is so true. And it's absolutely true for Katai as well. She's so stuck in having to pay monthly debts and that, and there's no relief from the pressure, rather than having something that is yours, that you can own, take responsibility for, and then bring the best of your talents too.
Yeah, and you're served with the community, so it's not all your responsibility, right? All of the maintenance, the growing of the food, learning how to do it, building the home, like that could take a lifetime to learn. So that's why we have community.
Exactly. Wow, thanks, Bekah. That's and I want to follow up with you on the business side of this as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I'm at the point now where I really want to take that to the next level. But for everyone watching, this is the first so-called podcast if they get better than this, I'm going to be a very, very happy man. This has been exceptional, Bekah, and I really appreciate your time and the input and the vision you've put into this. It's been extraordinary, really, really extraordinary. So
you're part of that.
Thank you. So let's talk fairly soon about that, and I mean that seriously. But for now, I just want to say there'll be a subscribe button below. So knock yourself out and pushing the subscribe button. But there'll also be links to what I do and what Rebecca does, and anything that's passed on to me that has any relationship whatsoever to Bekah, I'll make sure she's included or it's passed on to her. So, neither of us have a website. we've got something real to work with.
Yes.
And we'll do a website as well. But thanks for listening, and you're invited to be a part of this, which is literally creating a new reality that's far more sustainable and human friendly, just to put it simply. So thanks, Bekah. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Let me find